It is episode number 19 of the River City Hardball podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Gibson, and today it's a pleasure to welcome in my friends from Bishop Snyder, the head coach, Zach Osbeck, and his catcher on his way to Notre Dame, Danny Neri. Guys, how you doing?
We're doing great. Couldn't be any better.
Very good. Danny, I know this was very tough for you this year. This would have been your senior year. You got to play 8 games, but due to COVID-19, the remainder of the season was canceled in early March. Just go through what that experience was like and how you're holding up right now, Danny.
Well, before the season, we all had a lot of really high expectations for ourselves. We were coming off a great year last year, had almost all of our guys returning. We were all very, very excited to get everything going. The season got off to a little bit of a shaky start. We were around 500, but we really felt like we had started to pick it up and play well, and we were all looking forward to what was to come the rest of the season. And then everything happened with COVID-19, and the season got cut short. And initially it was a little hard to take. It was almost hard to believe because nothing like that had ever happened before. And so it took a little while to sink in. And when it did, there were definitely a few days where I think we all had to adjust to the new reality of the fact that we weren't going to complete our season. But I feel like I've been able to move past it a little bit. And like I was telling you earlier, I was really happy the fact that we had such a great season last year, and I got to spend so many games and so much time with all the guys that are on my team and all my teammates who have impacted me so much that I didn't feel like there was anything missing. I felt like I had a great experience, and although it was unfortunate the way it ended, I'm excited for what's to come and looking forward to the future.
And you've got a bright future ahead of you on your way to Notre Dame. We'll get to that in just a moment. Coach Osbeck, you've been coaching a long time. This is unlike anything you've ever gone through. How have you gone through it?
You know, Andrew, to be quite honest with you, a lot like Danny, we had high expectations and we set some very, very lofty goals. And I put, honestly, he mentioned we got off to a rough start, quite honestly, because I put the toughest schedule out there that I possibly could for these guys. And it was meant to challenge them and get after them a little bit. And so it certainly was difficult, knowing that there was a real possibility that we wouldn't be able to finish that season. I've been at Bishop Snyder now for 17, 18 years. And quite honestly, we've had a couple of teams that have competed here and there, but we've never had a team that I felt was the complete package. We had pitching, we had defense, we had offense. You mentioned we scored some runs in those 8 games that we played. But more than anything else, we had leaders like Danny that I felt really had taken us to that next step. We've always been competitive, but it was something different. Something had changed with Bishop Snyder baseball, and Danny had so much to do with that the last 4 years. And so for it to be cut short certainly was disappointing because we didn't reach that potential. But, at the end of the day, you got to be grateful for what you do have, and we certainly aren't going to complain about the great times that we did.
Coach, what has been the message to the guys that their career's done now? I mean, Danny's going to go on and play college baseball at Notre Dame, but many, in fact, are not going to do things like that. What's been your message to guys that this is it for them?
You're right. And, that's not a message that wouldn't be the first time they heard that. We talked about that way back, at the beginning of last season. When we start talking to our seniors and we start talking to those juniors, guys, one day it's going to be over. It's funny. I didn't know it at the time. I thought it might happen, but our last game was the Thursday before the quarantine period started, and we had a great opportunity. Creekside was coming over to Bishop Snyder. And before the game, we did a little pregame work, and we're doing some meditation, believe it or not, in our cages. And one of the things I talked to the guys, this could be it, and never, I get chills when I say it because that was something that we preach every single day. You go out there like that, like every day's your last game, every day's opening day and every day's your last game. So it wasn't certainly wasn't the first time they had heard it. But it did take a while for these guys to kind of understand that, it really was my last time on that field. So Danny, he's built for quarantine life. You want to talk about waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning, getting the schoolwork done, hitting the gym, hitting the weights, going to hit. I mean, that's the lifestyle he's ready for. So, it didn't affect him quite as much as those other guys that you mentioned, but there are a handful of our guys. We had 7 seniors, 5 of them, have probably played their last inning. So, difficult for them, but at the same time, they were certainly ready for it and prepared for it.
Danny, you've got Notre Dame coming up next. First of all, let's take a step back. Why Notre Dame, and what are you excited most about going to play for the Fighting Irish now?
I think with Notre Dame, the only question you can ask is why not Notre Dame? I mean, it has everything that I could ever have possibly looked for. It's great academics, incredible tradition, fantastic athletics. It's in the location for me was awesome. The first time I saw it, the drive in, we landed in Chicago and drove into South Bend, and the drive in was these rolling hills and open country, which I'm really a big fan of. And then we got into South Bend and it had enough of that college town feel. So I felt like I really had the best of both worlds there. The baseball coaches staff is fantastic. They've always been incredibly hospitable to me, and they've always been great to my family. Academically, I haven't had much experience with that side of the school yet because I haven't been there. But, I mean, everything I've ever heard about it, everything that I saw on my visit was just fantastic. And I really felt like that was going to be a good place to call home for the next 4 years.
What was the recruitment process like with Notre Dame?
Well, I had been committed previously to a different school and then decommitted. And not long after, got back into contact with Rich Wallace, who I had developed a relationship with a few years earlier when he was at Jacksonville University and had recently moved to Notre Dame to be their recruiting coordinator. And so he and I kind of got back into touch and talked a little bit. And I was really interested in Notre Dame because of its reputation athletically and academically, which is something I was really looking for. And he had known me as a player and a person for a few years already. So the relationship was there, and it turns out that they happened to be in need of a catcher in my class, and so everything just kind of fell into place.
Danny's fired up to go to Notre Dame. Coach, I would have to imagine somebody that coaches him, you got to be fired up too to see him go there.
I could not be happier for Danny and his family, and certainly Notre Dame staff. I know how excited they are to have him. It's just a perfect fit. I mean, we've certainly had some guys move on and play at the next level at Bishop Snyder, but I don't know if I can tell you, or I can certainly not say that it's never been to the height and prestige of Notre Dame. So I'm certainly excited for Dan and his family. Couldn't happen to a better group.
I'm going to ask each of you a question while you're both sitting there with each other, virtually, of course. Coach, what's it like to coach Danny?
It is rare that you get an opportunity to coach a kid like Danny. We've told the story a little bit. I started with Danny when he was about 10 years old. His older brother, was a cross-country and track star at Bishop Snyder High School. So Danny used to tag along with Dad when they'd have track meets and things like that. And we'd hit a little bit in the cage. And, at 10 years old, I knew he was something special. Not only was he hit left-handed, which I really liked, but he was also a catcher. And we've had our success of catchers in the past as well. So it felt like truly to this point now, it feels like he's part of my family. And his family is also part of my family. I mean, I love him to death. But to have a type of leader that Danny's turned into and the type of young man that he's turned into, and I said it the other night, we had a virtual Zoom signing for all of our kids at Bishop Snyder the other night. And I mentioned that it's, as proud of him as I am as a baseball player and what type of player he's turned into, even more special is to see a kid go from 10 years old and turn into a young man with the type of leadership and character that this kid has. So I couldn't be prouder, and I'm certainly really happy for them.
Danny, let me ask you this. What's it like to play for Coach Osbeck?
If I tried to go over the impact that he's had on myself and my family in full detail, it would take more time than we have here, I think. He has, like he said, he's been a presence in my baseball life and personal life for a long time, since I was 10 years old. I still remember the first day I met him. And I owe so much of my baseball career to him. He helped build my swing from when I was 10 years old and helped guide me and help me to be where I am. But the main thing that I think of when I think of him as a coach is the way he coaches us to be men. And that's one thing that he always said to us. And one thing I remember from last year when we had just lost in the district semifinals in a really tough game, we'd had a great season and everyone was kind of down and, a little disappointed. And I remember what he said was that his job as a coach and all of our coaches was to make sure that beyond baseball, he was preparing us to be good fathers and good husbands when we get into our lives, whenever that may be. And that's something that sticks with me when I think about him, is the impact that he's had on me, of course, as a baseball player, which has been just phenomenal. And I couldn't thank him enough for that, but also as a person and as a young man, like he said. And I'm incredibly grateful to have had that influence in my life.
Coach, what's Danny's biggest strength? I've seen some of the numbers that he put up last year, hit over 300, a couple of home runs, an OPS over 1,000. So you're talking about a very well-rounded player. What would you say are some of the best strengths of Danny's game?
I think he's as good as he is physically. He's very, very cerebral. I mean, this is a kid that's got a 4.3 GPA. Obviously, he's going to Notre Dame. So he thinks about things before I do. It's certainly he and I have a relationship as he's back there behind the dish and he's managing that pitching staff. And sometimes I'll go out to the mound or I'll go talk to him and he'll tell me, hey, coach, he just needs to do this or this looks good. He's the type of guy. He's not that leader on the field that's going to get in those guys' face and tell them what they need to do. I've said it before, Danny's he's going to lead by example. So he's the guy that you want to be a part of the program because he's the guy that's going to stay after practice and work. He may have gone 3 for 4 that night, but he's going to stay after at 9:30 because on that fourth AB, he popped up to short left field and he knows he wasn't leaving the park, left something there. So that's the type of thing that you get from Danny, just the kind of the intangibles that you can't teach. I mean, he can give all the praise that he wants about how I helped him with the swing. That's not it. I sat there and flipped the ball and go, hey, that looks good. Hey, that looks good. Keep doing that, So all I had to do was get out of his way. I certainly didn't want to mess him up and his potential. So, he's the complete package, which is why he's going up to Notre Dame with the Fighting Irish.
Danny, not everybody is built to be a catcher. That takes, like Coach said, cerebralness. It takes everything involved with baseball. You got to sit behind the dish and be very good defensively. You have the task of managing a pitching staff. Oh, by the way, you also hit as well. So not everybody can do it.
Yeah, it's I think like most catchers who stay with it up to higher levels, I take a lot of pride in getting beat up behind the plate. That's kind of something that we're very proud of, is the fact that as a catcher, we're willing to sit back there and take balls off the chest and off the mask and sometimes off the throat, which has happened to me a few times, because that's how we help our team. Someone's got to do it. And I've always been really happy to be the guy to do that job. And like Coach Osbeck said, the mental part of catching is something that I really, really love. I've always been someone who likes to think my way through problems and think about how can I get to where I need to be. And catching allows me to do that. I've always, one of the things that you hear about catchers is they're the only guy who can see all the other players on the field and see the whole field, where everyone else's back is turned to the field the way they're facing. And so that kind of helps to show what my job is I can see everything. So it's my job to help line everybody up and make sure everyone's where they need to be. And I've always loved that part of the game. And so that's been something that draws me to catching. And then I think with most positions, there's just something about it that I can't really explain that I'm just drawn to. The same way a shortstop's probably drawn to playing shortstop because it's something he can't explain that he loves in it. And so, yeah, I think it's a fantastic position, and being able to hit on top of it is fantastic, because I always thought hitting was the most fun part of the game. So really allows me to do all parts of the game, and I love it.
Coach, you got a comment on that? I mean, catching's not built for everybody, is it?
It's not. And, like you said, he'll tell you that he keeps getting hit in the throat because the pitcher threw a bad pitch. I said, keep your head down, Danny, but I don't know a whole lot about catching. He did a great job behind the dish for us. We're very, very fortunate that we have, like I mentioned, catcher you. We've had a couple of guys come through here, but we've never had a catcher like Danny that he mentioned. Not only is he great defensively behind the dish, but he can hit, he can run, he can throw. You talk about those 5-tool guys, and he's certainly one of those guys that probably has about 4.5 at this point right now. And we're working on that other half. So
develop his feet a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, we're looking on that a little bit. So no, it's phenomenal, and that's going to be a big hole to fill, certainly in that middle of that defense.
A couple more minutes here with you guys. We're talking with Zach Osbeck, the head coach of Bishop Snyder, and his terrific catcher, Neri, that's on his way to Notre Dame. Coach, where can he improve? You mentioned 4.5 of those tools. What's the other half?
I would probably tell you offensively. Well, defensively, we always have room for improvement. He'll be the first one to tell you when he messes up behind the dish. I'm going to be the first one to let him know about it. As a matter of fact, there's been times in which I've thrown his old glove out there to the dish at him just so he can pick it up and throw the other one back at me. But probably more than anything else, obviously Danny's a great hitter. He has all the ability to be a great hitter. But we've talked a lot about knowing what pitches to hit and what counts and what pitches to lay off of and in certain counts. Danny thinks he can hit any pitch that they throw up there. And he certainly can, but there are certain pitches that he can hit hard and certain pitches that he can't. And so that's one of the things that really comes last as to be a great hitter. You have to really understand what the zone is and what the count is and what the situation is. And, Danny was the type of player with first 3 years with us that he was the best hitter I had, so I put him at leadoff. He's got to get the most at bats. He was probably more of an RBI guy for us, but I wanted to get him to the plate as much as I possibly could. And this year we kind of moved him down to the 3-hole, to the 4-hole, so that we could get him a little bit more opportunities for those RBIs. And there's certain times in which I don't want you to swing at that 3-1 pitch, even though you think you could probably hit it. That's not what we're looking for. And so that's probably the biggest thing that all young hitters is probably the last thing to come, is really knowing what pitches to hit and what situations. And then certainly power also comes with growth and strength. He's a kid that works extremely hard in the weight room. I mean, if I showed you a picture of him as a freshman right now, you'd probably laugh because he's a different kid. Many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches from Coach Kellen later. He's grown into a big kid, but certainly the maturity is going to come, and he's going to start hitting those balls that we talk about from gap to gap. Those are going to start traveling a little bit more and get out of the yard. So we're excited to see that progression.
Danny, so that the senior year is done, unfortunately, and now the next step is Notre Dame. Have your coaches at Notre Dame talked to you about going through this process of not having the remainder of your high school season and just prepping yourself to get ready for college?
I think the expectation is that once the high school season ends, we're all getting ready to move on to the next level. So I don't think that's a conversation we've had to have directly. I've been in contact with those coaches throughout all of this, and I've sent some videos of me catching and hitting and said, hey, coach, if there's anything you see here you think I should work on, please let me know, so that way I can be as ready as I can once I get there. And so that's mostly it. I've been working with some other guys, getting some live ABs off some pitchers and catching some bullpens and everything like that to try to stay ready. And like Coach said, been in the weight room a lot, trying to get bigger. So I think once high school ended, the automatic assumption was it's time to get ready for college. And so that's what I've been doing. And I think that's the expectation they have for me as well.
Coach, final thing or two. I'll start with you on this. The Major League Baseball draft was just cut down from 40 rounds to 5. Was the draft, I have to imagine, for somebody that's going to Notre Dame with the talent that Danny has, was the draft ever a possibility for him?
Absolutely. It certainly was. I think Danny was certainly kind of set in his destination and where he's headed. I mean, baseball or not, this is a kid that's going to be super successful in life. And so if the draft was an opportunity that came upon him, that would be a great, feather in the hat, so to speak. But, and he certainly had that ability to do that. But I think his priority and his dream and his goals probably are going to take him someplace else. But certainly he certainly has that ability, and there was no doubt in my mind his name was going to get called during that draft at some point in time.
What about you, Danny? I mean, how much did the draft factor into your mind?
I think, like Coach Osbeck said, I wasn't really expecting it to get drafted, probably anywhere within the top 10 or 20 rounds. If anything, it probably would have been a little lower. But like he said, it would have been an incredible honor to get drafted. I mean, every kid grows up hoping to get drafted at some point, so that would have been really cool to experience. But going and getting a Notre Dame education and a degree from that university it's really hard to put a price on. And especially knowing that I would have the opportunity to get drafted again 3 or 4 years later. So I think the plan was always to go to college unless something drastic happened where it looked like I might have gotten drafted in the first or second round. But college was definitely the number one plan, and the draft would have been a little bit of icing on the cake and just a really cool experience.
Coach, Danny's going to leave your program with quite a statement that he's left on your program, quite an impact. But you got some other guys, too, that are very talented players, Wroblewski, Ortiz, just to name a few. But talk about that 2021 group that you have coming back at Bishop Snyder.
Yeah, you kind of nailed it. I mean, we do have a couple of younger guys that we'll see if they're ready to step up or not. I mean, Danny's kind of laid that path and set the bar pretty high. He's helped to change the culture of Bishop Snyder baseball, and we have very, very high expectations now. It's been a while since you lose 7 seniors and you move on to that next year. And, quite honestly, we have the same expectations as you had that year before. So we're looking for some younger guys to step up and take a step to that next level. You mentioned Nick. He's going to fill in really well for Danny. Nick's headed out to JU with one of my best friends in the world, Chris Hayes. So we're excited to see that progression and see him improve a lot. And Sebastian Ortiz that you mentioned certainly has the ability to handle the bat for us at the top of the lineup and defensively super solid. So we're looking for some of those younger guys to step up. It's not going to be easy, but more than anything else, we're going to look for shoes to fill, the leadership shoes to fill that we're going to lose when you lose 7 seniors, Danny being one of them.
We'll finish with this, Danny. What's the one thing that you're most excited about in going to Notre Dame?
That's hard to just choose one thing. I'd say probably is moving up to that next level of competition and facing guys who are going to bring it every single day. I was lucky to have played high school baseball in a great baseball area. Jacksonville has some of the best competition you can find in high school baseball. And so to have that experience and now get to move to the next level where it's going to be even that much more competitive is really exciting.
Well, hey, guys, I appreciate a few minutes of your time on a Friday night. This was great stuff. Danny, wish you the best. I know you'll do great things at Notre Dame and beyond. And, Coach, we appreciate your time as well.
Thanks, David. Keep it up.
All right, guys. Take care. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for what you do.